Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Log Show here on WSJU and here on YouTube, on the Log Show YouTube channel. How is everybody doing on this beautiful Tuesday, November 26th, right before we go back to break? For those of you tuning in on the YouTube, yes, it does look a little different. We have a new camera angle that I'm trying out as I'm here by myself. No Eric today. No any guests today. Actually, I need to shut this door today is what I need to do. So for those of you on the radio, I'm sorry if I go a little silent. Those of you on the YouTube, that's where I am. I had to go shut a door real quick that I forgot to shut. I apologize for that. But here we are back on this Tuesday after NFL Week 11. That was all that really happened this weekend, from my knowledge. That and a lot of college football, a lot of big things happened, actually, in college football nonetheless. So I am very, 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 very excited to talk about the one and the only sport that I want to talk about, which is football today. I mean, obviously, in other sports, there are other sports going on, Basketball's going on. The Knicks are playing very well. They got a big win over the I can't remember who they beat last night, but they beat them by like 25. So the Knicks got a big win last night. Not only that, hockey's been up and down. The Islanders have been blowing leads left and right, so I've been not really paying attention to hockey. When my favorite team's not good, I don't pay that much attention, so I've not been paying that much attention to hockey. With the Islanders just like I said, just blowing leads left and right over there in the new UBS arena over there in Elmont. So, I mean, yeah, that's what's happening over there. But yeah, in football, there's a lot going on. When it comes to the college football world, obviously there was a ton of upsets. When it comes to the NFL world, week week 12, I apologize. I said week 11 before. Week 12 was exciting. A couple upsets there, a couple games closer than people may have expected. Obviously the Browns on Thursday night getting a big win there. You have the Ravens last night getting a big win in Harbaugh number 3. Chiefs barely get away with one in Carolina. You have a lot of games. You have the Bears lose another close one in Minnesota, that one in overtime. You have Tommy DeVito get absolutely smacked by Baker Mayfield. You have the Cowboys get their surprise win. So a lot happened in Week 12. And then also on the college football front, you have the Alabama loss. You have that. With the college football rankings coming tonight, you really wonder how that is going to end up. Also, Daniel Jones, now a free agent, was cut by the New York Giants as of Friday of last week. Cleared waivers I believe it was as of Friday. Maybe it was as of Monday. Maybe it was as of yesterday, now that I think of it. Or it was over the weekend. I don't know. I know it was after my show on Thursday. I don't remember the exact day it happened. But Daniel Jones is cut from the New York Giants, no longer on the New York Giants, which is a big deal. He cleared waivers officially. He's officially an NFL free agent as of last night. That I know what happened last night was him clearing waivers. So he is officially an NFL free agent, looking to see where he goes. A lot of the rumors are pointing towards Minnesota, stuff like that. I definitely want to talk about that. You have this whole Aaron Rodgers situation in New York, too, which is getting really, really interesting what's happening with Aaron Rodgers and now Woody and the media. So we'll definitely get into that and my opinions on that because, we talked about that earlier in the year with the Robert Saleh firing, how I felt about Woody Johnson. And, yeah. But, yeah, and then obviously the college. I want to start, obviously, today. You see me skimming over the NFL. It seems like I'm not going to start with the NFL today. It's because I'm not. Actually, what I do want to start with today is the college football. Every Tuesday night, they do the good old college football playoff rankings for these 12 team rankings, which will be so fun to see. I have the AP top 25 pulled up right here, which as of, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, if not 3 weeks ago, sadly does not really matter. It is now the college football and their committee of who they feel are the 12 teams that deserve to be in the playoff. Now, you have a lot of stuff that kind of happened in college football last week, a lot of big games. You had that top 5 matchup between Ohio State and Indiana, where Indiana just gets absolutely routed. You got Will Howard having his fun celebration with the cigarette, throwing that in the ground, stomping that out. He enjoys doing that. He had fun doing that. You have Ohio State just absolutely pounding Indiana in that matchup. Indiana's big matchup of the year that was considered to many. That one was the one that proved whether Indiana was arguably a playoff team or not. With them losing, it proves that they may not be for real. It kind of scares a lot of people into what, or not scares a lot of people, would scare a lot of Indiana, a lot of Hoosiers fans for their future in the college football playoff, with not a lot of big victories, not a big power schedule, Obviously, obviously they are in the Big Ten, but you look at Indiana so far this season, and they just don't have the types of wins that you would want out of a team that uh, is a top 5 team in the country. You know what I'm saying? They barely squeezed out a win over Michigan, who's not very good this year. Like going into the year, there was going into the year there was the Washington game looked kind of good. The Michigan game, like I said, was on their schedule. They were, reigning national champions going into the year. So you had all these teams just sitting there for Indiana, and their big challenge was this Ohio State game. Obviously, you have to go into Ohio State. That's tough at the end of the day. Going into Ohio State is obviously always going to be pretty tough, no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what type of team you've built so far. I feel like, obviously, they're Ohio State, but um, I don't know. I don't think they've been the same Ohio State under Ryan Day that they were under Urban Meyer, but Ohio State's a blue blood. I think they're one of those blue bloods, kind of like a Notre Dame, that they're never. I don't think Ohio State, no matter if Ohio State has a stretch of bad coaches, they'll be mediocre at best. They'll never be terrible. You'll never see this huge dip. So I don't know. I think it's a rough outing for Indiana, and in the AP top 25, they moved them down to number 10 in that ranking. So to see where the college football committee is going to move them down will be very interesting. Whether they're still even in the playoff or not, I think will be very, very, very interesting. Not only that, you have the Alabama loss to Oklahoma, which is not a good loss for Alabama there to Oklahoma. A really, really bad one. So that's going to bump Alabama down the list. So what's going on in the SEC is going to be very interesting. I don't even know. I guess at this point the SEC championship is going to be between Georgia and Texas. And I mean, if you're Georgia and you could squeeze out a win there, that makes the SEC just as a whole look so good, because Texas has been clicking all year. I mean, Georgia's got an interesting game this week with Georgia Tech. Obviously a rivalry game, a very well-known rivalry game between those two. And Georgia Tech has done crazy things this year. In week 1 they beat Florida State, which looking back at it might not have been that impressive, but in week 1 was very impressive. And then they get the upset win over Miami a week or two ago. So Georgia Tech is a team to look out for. Being Georgia playing this week. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there. But being Georgia, playing Georgia Tech this week, that one's going to be a tough one. But just talking about tonight, I don't want to talk about next Saturday that much. But, it's very interesting to see. You have Alabama, who has that loss to USC. Or not USC, sorry. Has that loss to Oklahoma, which doesn't look great on their schedule. Doesn't look great on their resume. They're now a 3-loss Alabama team. A lot of people are arguing now if Alabama makes the playoff, there's a lot of committee bias. That's what I feel like a lot of people are going to feel, with a 3-loss Alabama team. That their 3 losses are, and the committee talks all the time about not only strength of schedule, but how good are those wins. You know what I mean? A bad loss is almost better than a bad win. Or a good loss is almost better than a bad win in the committee's eyes. So you have that whole situation, which gets really, really, really weird when it comes to Alabama, because the committee says that. But then if they put Alabama in the top 12 this week, you're looking at an Alabama team that's lost to They lost to Georgia, yeah, which is obviously a tough loss. Like obviously that's a good team. Or maybe they lost to Tennessee. It was one of those two, but both of them are 6-7, so that's a good loss. And then they lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Like you can't look at that team and tell me that a team that lost to Vanderbilt in Vandy and Oklahoma at home is a good team. Like those are two really tough losses for Alabama that really put them in a weird spot going forward. And you look at this, their first year without Nick Saban, it's gonna scare a lot of Bama fans, I believe. I think a lot of them are gonna be really, really scared about what's gonna happen. What is this new era looking like with these losses? Like I said, you lost to Vanderbilt for the first time in 50 years. You lost to Oklahoma late in the season that you couldn't have lost that game. It was a must-win game against an Oklahoma team that's not that good this year. You lose that game. The AP has them right now at 13. They have them right outside of that top 12, which I don't disagree with. You also have Ole Miss obviously um falling out of there with their loss to Florida this week. So it just gets so interesting into what's really gonna bounce around here. Obviously, Indiana. Um, uh, where's SMU gonna fall? Where's Clemson gonna fall? It's weird. I want to pull up the playoff rankings of last week. Their website is so fancy, man. Such a fancy website here for the college football playoff. Such a fancy website. Can you just load the rankings? There we go. Yeah, I don't know. Because you had SMU at 13, you had BYU at 14, right? You had A&M. A&M gets an upset loss. Colorado loses. So like I said, you have Alabama with this bad loss. I think they bounce out of the top 12. Indiana's bouncing back. So I think naturally Notre Dame just got a big win over Army. They're going to move up to 5, right? What? Miami, you're going to put at 6? I don't think you do that. I think you put Georgia at 6 over Miami, especially with them playing GT this week. I think you put Tennessee over Miami, right? So then that actually moves Miami down 1 to 9, right? Ole Miss gets booted out. So you have Boise at 10, SMU at 11, BYU at 12. That would be the easy way to say it, I guess. I mean, does Clemson shoot up there maybe? Maybe Dabo and them, they shoot up there and get it within the top 12. Maybe they're the first team out. I don't know. This gets really interesting with what's going on in college football. Because also, Alabama, you argue, has a lot of good players. They have that wide receiver. He's really good. Um, they have Jalen Milrow. They have they got a lot of good pieces. And then obviously in Miami, you got Cam Ward. So you know what I mean. That's why they've stayed afloat because he's a Heisman candidate. And then Oregon's just been a roll with Dylan Gabriel and them. Unless they lose, which I doubt they do this week to Washington, but they're the shoe in number 1. It's just everybody else below hand. And how this bracket ends up, I don't know. It'll be very interesting to look at. I know I rambled about this for 15 minutes as someone who's like a very casual college football fan. I don't know too much, like a whole lot about college football, but this year's been fun, man, with all these upsets and the 12-team playoffs. So I've been trying to get into it, paying as much attention as possible, and just yeah, I don't know. I think obviously the top 4 is going to stay. Indiana is going to move down. Oh, yeah, I forgot about them. So I guess you have Indiana at 9 or 10, maybe 11 for Indiana. That's the real interesting part. What the committee does with the 10-1 Indiana team where they got routed by Ohio State, and then they're sitting there not only getting routed by Ohio State and the close to Michigan, close game against Washington. So That one I think is the one that we have to look at where the committee goes at tonight because that's going to be the most interesting one. I think they probably put him at 10 like the AP did. I like what the AP did there. I think keeping them within the top 10 is the smart thing to do. Like, you know, but where you weigh certain teams on certain schedules, I don't know cuz you know what I'm saying? You give this Indiana team that Georgia schedule, how much better are they? Arguably they could be a five loss team if you give them like that Georgia schedule or the Alabama schedule or these teams that like in the SEC. That's why these SEC teams get such bias. Is you have this SEC bias that's just like they're just so good and their schedules are so tough. It's I don't know what else you have to do. So I don't know. We'll see where this committee goes tonight. Also, my computer is not charging right now. I don't know why the wire is not working. So it does look like I'm going to get in the NFL, but it looks like we are going to have a shortened show today as we go into the break, as we go into the holiday, just because it's technical issues. You know, I had to choose either charge a laptop, either be it, you know what I mean? There's things I thought I had a wire attached, a good adapter that's working, but it was not working. So I apologize for that. So it looks like we might have to end the show early today. Not right now. I've only been here for 15 minutes. Not right now, but it might only be a half hour, 45 minutes today. I do want to start talking about since we do have to move on because of the technical difficulties. I want to get into the NFL now. Just skip over what I was gonna even talk about college football wise. And talk about the New York Giants for at first, where they are as a franchise. Um, I think you're in a really interesting spot if you're the New York Giants. You look at what just happened and how this whole Daniel Jones situation was handled. I think benching him. You had Rex Ryan go off on good get up. I think a day or two ago after it was argued he was benched when people were coming out and talking about Malik Neighbors. I think it was yesterday. Rex Ryan came out and kind of did his whole spiel, got mad, a little TV drama added into it, but I get what Rex was saying where in benching Daniel Jones, you gave up on this team. Now, I don't think that's necessarily completely true. I think in benching Daniel Jones, you were being realistic, knowing that you aren't making the playoffs. I think picking Tommy DeVito might have been selling the season because Tommy DeVito is more of a show and is more there to sell tickets than he is to win games. No offense, Mr. DeVito, but he's not. Um, I mean, Tommy DeVito. Obviously, everyone in the NFL is a talented quarterback, and I respect Tommy DeVito so much for what he's done and what he was able to do last season. But you're not putting Tommy DeVito in necessarily to go out there and you know over at least. Let me put it this way: if Tommy DeVito, and I'm using Tommy DeVito is just the name, and you go with Tommy DeVito, like I said, because of the whole thing that happened last year. Because logically, he was on your depth chart, the quarterback 3. So why, when you bench Daniel Jones, you don't just put in Drew Lock, who the whole year was your backup quarterback, the whole year served as your backup quarterback? That's where it looks like you're giving up on the team. Is you're skipping over QB2 and you're throwing in QB3 for the rest of the year. It's not even specifically that it was Tommy DeVito. Now, the fact that it was Tommy DeVito to me does kind of add to it because, like I said, Tommy DeVito was this whole show. He was this whole, last year, the shebang, the shaboo that, Baker was able to even make fun of last week in the loss. So you have that whole situation, but when it comes to the Daniel Jones situation, I think you kind of had to bench him. I said this last week. I think the season was over. I think the career with Daniel Jones was over as is. I did not expect them to cut him as the season went on. I kind of expected it maybe to happen in the offseason. But I really didn't expect them to cut him during the season. I do agree that also benching Daniel Jones for injury concern, it's similar to what the Raiders did with Derek Carr when Derek Carr was on his way out. Doing it was the sign that Daniel Jones was done. I completely know that. And I completely agree with that. And I see why the people are saying he gave up on the team. I don't see the point in necessarily cutting Daniel Jones during the season. Maybe I do because, again, it maybe feels like you're not necessarily giving up on the team as much as Rex Ryan's argument was. But you look at that situation, I think that was more the Giants trying to be nice to Daniel and looking at him and saying, hey, Mr. Jones, we're going to give you a nice shake of the hand. Respect, you could go somewhere else for the rest of the season. And as we look at that, I don't see why he wouldn't go to a Super Bowl contender. You know, you look at teams like the Vikings, like the 49ers, like, I don't think he's going to go to a team that necessarily needs a quarterback right now. I don't think he's going to want to play necessarily for the rest of the year, but kind of just learn. So going to those teams that could use a backup, maybe Baltimore, I've heard of a couple times. Those types of teams, I could definitely see eyeing Daniel Jones as he enters free agency with it loading up. You maybe have the Denver Broncos. Like, I don't know. Schefter said on Pat McAfee that he's probably going to be going to a playoff contender. Like, so he's taking out the Raiders, who even though they lost Gardner Minshew, he's taking out the Cowboys with no Dak Prescott. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. Like I said, I think the 49ers are interesting. I think the Ravens are interesting. I think the Vikings, those would be the three spots to look at if he does want to land on a team. But shout out Daniel Jones, I guess. Shout out to what he's able to do. Hopefully he's able to find a spot. I mean, that's not the only team in New York with quarterback issues across the locker room. What's going on with the Jets right now is absolute blasphemy, man. That is absolutely insane what is going on with the Jets right now. They just seem unable to really click on anything. It's just a constant over and over again. Everything that they're just doing and just seems to be falling apart at the seams, man. It just all seems to be falling apart at the seams, bro. You now have this whole situation with obviously your season. You're here on the Jets. You're sitting there at um you're sitting there at a solid 3-8, and you're in an interesting spot. Like, your season is probably over. I don't personally see the Jets going on any sort of super run with the with what they have left. But what I do know is you have right now an owner in Woody Johnson who's come out almost pretty much in the media and said that he wanted, like, the leaks came out that he wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers in week 4. The leaks came out that he doesn't want Aaron Rodgers next year. So now you have this whole situation where it's like, whoa, like, it seems to have all fallen apart so fast with the firing of Salo in week 5 and the now this with Woody Johnson and the Achilles last year, and could he come back by the end of last year? Isn't able to come back. You guys missed the playoffs. Almost kind of going around with Zach Wilson. Come back with him. Like, this has been one of the worst failed experiments I have seen in a long time. This is up there with, like, Russell Wilson to Denver with with Russell Wilson to Denver with I'm just trying to think here of just stuff that has fallen on its face so exponentially like this. Like Matt Ryan in Indianapolis, like Carson Wentz anywhere after Philadelphia. It's just like